Welcome to our panel talking about queering up the pipeline with Queerty Gamers. Gaming Live is presented by Healthysexual from Gilead Sciences, and the Community Zone is sponsored by Remag, a new place to connect with gamers in your community. Thank you to both of them for their support in making this happen. Hi, y'all. I am California girl Chris from Queerty Gamers. I am operations manager, and I will be the host for today. Would everybody like to introduce themselves? I'll go ahead and start it off. Let's go with Jack. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. And just before we went live, I asked everybody to grab something off of their desk to let us know why it is important to them. So everybody's going to be talking about something on their desk and why it's important to them. I have something too.
Hello, everybody. My name's Jack Guffey. I'm the founder of Heavy Thought Studios, and creator of the game The Office Type. My interesting thing, I have a blacksmith forged ring here that I made as a child. And I like it because it's one of the first examples of my own creativity and also a reminder of how much I can improve.
Awesome. Alrighty, Nikolai?
Sure. My name is Nikolai. I am here partly as the Inverted Spire developer. I am also an illustrator and a novelist and so on. Let's see, I do have an object. This is a cute little thing. It looks like a small console gaming device, but what it is, it's actually a fidget toy, and it was something that was given to me by my partner after I got my very late autism diagnosis. So it's something that's very personal to me.
Nice. Go ahead, Geneva.
Hi, my name's Geneva. I'm the creator of Skate and Date, and I've also gotten to work on other games like Validate, Treachery and Beatdown City, and Insecure the Come Up game. And my favorite little desk thing right now is my Paws of Pride. Oh my god, Paws of Pride speaker. It recently broke, so I'm really sad about it. But it's very cute.
It is very cute. I love it. All right, and for mine, so I couldn't decide what I wanted to grab, so I decided to grab a box. I actually do have this on my desk, or actually under my desk, and it's just a memory box. It's everything throughout, or a bunch of stuff throughout the years, like different conventions and stuff that we've been to as Queerty Gamers, as well as other things. And one day I will put everything in a scrapbook, and that's why, lots of memories in here. So awesome! Thanks y'all for sharing a little bit about yourselves. That was really impressive to have something from childhood for that long. Like I don't know what I have. I have some old stuff, but I don't know if I have anything from my childhood. That's for sure. But y'all, we are Queerty Gamers, and y'all are developers who we have actually had the opportunity to help out. You're making your own games, Geneva, Skate and Date, Nikolai with the Inverted Spire, and Jack on the Office Type. The Office Type, I believe, was one of our most recent recipients for the Victoria Kennedy Micro Grant, actually. And we did get to do a little playthrough and a little panel not too long ago. So let's go ahead and jump in with these questions. Let's start with Geneva. What inspired you to create a game with queer elements?
Yeah, so when I started creating Skate and Date, I was in high school, and at the time, I just recently started getting to play more queer games with queer characters in them. And as a person who loves rhythm games, I was like, okay, how can I combine these two things that I really want to see more together? And so basically, I took a lot of just inspiration from my life and like kind of made this game to be like something that I would have wanted to play it if I was still in high school. So something that just more young black and brown queer kids can get to have fun with.
Awesome. Nikolai.
Same question. Okay.
Yeah. So what inspired you to create a game with queer elements?
So I think that this is probably the fake out answer, but it's simply an emergent property of my environment, because I work largely in the nonprofit sector, and a lot of the people who I surround myself with, queer and trans people who have had a kind of a rough go of it. People who are from an immigrant and refugee background, who maybe have been through some family trauma and so on. And so these are people who I love, my friends, my community, my family, and anything creative that I make is inevitably going to reflect that part of myself, because we cannot help but put ourselves in our work. So it's as simple as that.
Awesome. So I'm loving these responses so far. So Jack, same question to yourself. What inspired you to create a game with queer elements?
Well, sort of along the same lines as Nikolai, I moved here to Chicago a long time ago, but I'm not originally from an area with a lot of queer people. And as I gathered friends, got to know more people, I found myself naturally surrounded by queer people in that community. And I want to make games that embody real life experiences, bring elements into games that people can relate to. And I feel like queerness in gaming is important to highlight.
Absolutely. There is not yet enough representation in gaming for queer folks. It's getting better, especially breaking through into the mainstream games like the AAA titles like what Overwatch and Tracer, uh, David from Dead by Daylight. So I mean, I wouldn't say that's like a super mainstream game, but it's a pretty popular game, especially in the queer community. On Twitch, you can always see the queer folks enjoying the game. So I want to know what is it that your games bring as far as queer elements go that you haven't seen in another game before, or how have you remade it to fit your game better? Let's start. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't call on anybody. Let's start with, let's say, Nikolai.
Okay. So the inverted spiral, let's talk about that. It's I would describe it as a negotiation game, a narrative-based negotiation game in a high fantasy setting. And something that was very important to me and to my co-developer Feardeer around that is we've played a lot of different types of like narrative games, dating games, and we both really wanted to create a game where the focus was on the social element and what it means to actually really simulate real human relationships with others. And I think this is quite challenging, especially in the context of a dating game, where you're kind of extracting something from someone. You're giving gifts, you're giving compliments, and then you kind of receive the character's approval. And often this is how improving your relationship with the characters in dating games is structured. And not that there's necessarily anything wrong with gamifying it that way, but we wanted to try something rather different, especially because the game was coming from a direction of it has quite hefty content warnings. It was coming from a direction of talking about authoritarian violence and cycles of trauma, and so we wanted to go a different direction. And I think that the way that we talk about relating to one another in kind of queer family, queer found family, played a really big factor in figuring out how to then restructure the way that relationships are received in the game, and the I guess you would say in the same way that an RPG might have agility, strength, and so on, how we could then rework the game to have these kinds of qualities within the relationships that are hidden. And as you are making decisions, you are seeing the various ways in which your decisions are impacting the characters. And it's not about pleasing anyone, it's about negotiating within that landscape. And each kind of decision that you make has context, and the context is very important. and all the characters that you see are impacted differently by it. And so you can play the same game in that same hour and get completely different narratives. So I think that's how that was influenced. Sorry if that was too long.
Oh no, not at all. Like if y'all talk about your games, we're here to not only support you but your games as well. You know, they're all indie developers. If y'all want to check out their games, you can head to the Query Gamers website. We should have some links to find them all there, and you can also just search them up on online. We got Geneva from Skate and Day, Jack from The Office Type, and Nikolai from The Inverted Spire. I'm sure if you search up NA, I looked it up actually just a moment ago. I was trying to find your developer name, but NA Melamed is the first thing that popped up for Inverted Spire. So if y'all want to go ahead and feel free to talk up your games, because I've seen them in action, and I'm not huge on narratives. I have a very difficult time paying attention to reading. That's just the fun life of being ADHD. But they are still very nice. They are still very pretty. I like watching people play narrative games. That I can do. I always watch streamers when they play narrative games. It's a lot easier for me to follow along. But I digress. Geneva, what does your game bring to the table that you haven't seen in another game?
So I feel like kind of going on what Nikolai said about a lot of dating sims kind of focus on pleasing the people that you're trying to date, and instead of kind of focusing on that, the character in the game Maggie, she's, instead of being a blank slate, she's a character who has different parts of her, different types of different parts of her personality that can be highlighted based on how you're playing the game. And the main thing that I kind of wanted to go for, since it's a rhythm game, is that tying these rhythm game elements to the narrative. So the game is roller derby, so you're dodging people, trying to get around a roller skating rink, for people to give a visual to people who don't really know much about roller derby. But so depending on if you're dodging people or if you're just kind of trying to ram into people, it affects how Maggie acts in the world and acts towards her love interest in the game. And more so, instead of kind of focusing on being oh, there's so many people to date, I'm kind of limited it to, this is a love story about two lesbians in high school trying to navigate the messiness and the strangeness that comes with all of that. And I feel like I've seen some games do that. I feel like I've seen Lovebird, which is also a rhythm dating sim, kind of be all right, we're going to tie the narrative and the rhythm games together. But I kind of just want to see more of that.
Awesome. And really quick before I jump over to Jack, thank you Geek Productions for rating. I don't know if I should thank them live on stream. I don't, but I'm gonna thank them anyway because I also stream, and it's always nice to be thanked whenever somebody sends their community over. Thank you for trusting us, and we hope you enjoy our little panel. Welcome in, welcome in. So Jack, tell us what does your game bring to the table you haven't seen before?
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, The Office Type is an office-themed comedy dating sim where your office supplies come to life and you date them. But in this game, you're able to choose the type of relationships you want. We have, dating relationships, platonic relationships, and intimacy. And you can sort of mix and match with a roster of 8 characters. And you could date all 3 at the same time if you wanted to. We sort of celebrate that freedom of love. And that's really what the whole game is all about.
Love that. We love some polyamorous representation in gaming, and I love that you're all going for a non-traditional route, because not everybody lives a traditional lifestyle anywhere in the world. So, having to please a character just for them to like you and whatever, it's not always what it is. That's not how life is always. So I like that you're bringing more real world aspects into your game and bringing more diversity into the games. because that's more of what we need to see. But I want to know, like, because there are so many people, like so many uh, genders and identities and stuff out there. What was how did you decide who, like, how many to include in your games? Because there's only so much you can include. What what did you do to capture their, I guess, their personas and then put them into your game? Let's see. And I want to know, like, how did you make sure that they were true to their personality? Let's go with Jack.
Yeah, so to give people an idea, in the office type, there are 24 characters to choose from, though you make a roster of 8 per playthrough. And they all came from different office supplies, where each office supply represents 3 different characters, and you choose one from the set. Each set having male, female, and a non-binary option, with non-binary options being their own identities throughout different sets. And a lot of that came from feel. Just like the careers we chose and the sort of personalities that came to light as we developed these characters, and their identities sort of became part of that, taking inspiration from people in our lives, our own experiences, our writers, and members of our team, things like that.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. What I'm noticing is so far all your games are, you're really putting your own life into it, and I think that's what really makes a game even better, is when you're passionate and it's something you care about. So Geneva, how did you make sure to capture each character's, like, true selves?
Yeah, I guess for me, I kind of wanted to write, especially since when I started writing this, I was in high school. I was trying to just write people that I feel like I would see in high school. I was very fortunate to be in like an artsy high school, so there was just a lot of and trans people while I was going to school. And also, like for characters in general, I kind of limited it to 15 different characters that will appear throughout the game, with the main focus being on the protagonists. But I wanted everyone to feel like they're more than just, I'm here to say my one line and leave. I wanted them to feel like people that can have their own lives that's happening off screen. But we're not going to get to see that entirely, but it's there.
So the characters, they have backstory. They have backstory that, you know, it because it doesn't necessarily have to be there, but I do appreciate when characters do have backstory, even if they're NPCs, because that means the developer actually does care about their project. And that's cool. I love it. Nikolai, what about yourself? Let us know, how did you capture your characters' personalities and make sure that they were true to themselves?
Sure. So I was actually thinking on the original question, which I think had to do specifically with the number of genders that were included.
Okay, yeah, no
But
problem.
I
How
can
did
sort of pivot as well. I I would say that all of the inverted spire has, I guess you would say, 7 central characters total.
Okay.
And I think that each of them, it was very important for each of them to have a very coherent backstory and a reason for being there, because the actual context is that they are all basically emerging from a carceral system, and they all have a reason to be there. They have all gone through just emerging from a penal colony, and they are being placed in this position where they have to enter something called the inverted spire, which is a strange artifact in that world, which appears to be rapidly destroying the environment around it. Nobody has been able to figure out why. And there's a certain narrative, a certain propaganda around what this is and why prisoners are being sent in to sort of rescue the world from it so that ordinary people don't have to. And so there's layer upon layer of these narratives, different forms of propaganda, and reasons why people will describe things a certain way, from their position of power, from their position of influence, and what they gain from it. And the entire game has this like overarching narrative based in the lore of the high fantasy world of why this is happening, why the society is structured the way it is, and then each character has their own sort of persona where they have an external narrative, an external persona that they present, and then multiple layers behind it. And the protagonist is they have this ability to read minds and can use it occasionally to glimpse characters' minds as part of the conversation, and it can be used strategically to shift the narrative and to understand the characters differently. But you can only do it in a temporal way, so if you choose to do it with one character, you can't with another, and so it can entirely shift your understanding of what the conversation is about. So it was very, very important to really build up each character from the ground up to be this entire person who could be a protagonist in their own right, so that they could have all these multiple dimensions that you could explore, and with each playthrough you would see different dimensions of that character if you focused on another. So
Awesome. Love it. So are there was there in the development process, was there ever a character that any of you wanted to create or add, but either didn't make the cut or they almost didn't make it? Like, what was that process? Well, first, is there a character that almost didn't make the final cut? Let's start with that. Geneva.
So for me, no, actually, just because of like the way that I kind of designed the game, I started it with being like, there's going to be 3 teams. I'm going to draw them all out and like figure out their relationships with each other. And I kind of just kept sticking with that as being like, okay, if I add any more, because each team is like 5 people, it'll be too much for me. But yeah, that's me.
What was the drive to want to add more?
Oh, so there definitely was a drive to add more, just because my initial idea for the game was for it to actually be like you're choosing 2 different characters who are going against each other. So it was supposed to be like a rhythm fighting game that's roller derby, and that would have been too much to be like, all right, we're making these 2 people like date by making them rivals. So it was a lot of like messy enemies to lovers I was writing at first, and it was like, okay, this is way too much. We're gonna bring it so far back, and not to say that I'm not gonna do that idea someday, but that definitely taught me like, no, I have my 3 teams. We're sticking with that.
Okay. Actually, that touches on a later question. Actually, Jack, why was there a character that didn't make the final cut, or did they?
Well, firstly, as our game is sort of centered around office supplies, a lot of fans were eager to see Microsoft Office's Clippy in the game. Of course, we couldn't do that. But one of the characters or sets of characters that we thought a lot more about was our stapler characters. They are the only ones who are sort of middle-aged, the sort of bosses of the company. And you don't often see those sorts of figures and their lives represented in a game where you're dating people. And it's good to see more of that these days, but and we thought we definitely had to include them. They're just sort of like the outliers in our game.
Your staplers are the outliers.
Hmm.
I feel like staplers are very important, though. You always end up needing them, but they're never around when you do.
Exactly.
Exactly. Nikolai, did you have any? Well, you said you had 7 main characters. Were there supposed to be more by any chance?
Actually, no.
No, okay.
I was very cautious about this because I immediately knew if we have to go so in depth with each character, we have to limit the scope very intently and make sure it stays limited. Especially with it. So the first chapter, I have not counted in a while, but the last time I counted, it was over 175,000 words. So this is how the branching storyline works. It's sort of a branching storyline network. That's what allows it to change so much with each playthrough. And it's a very slow-moving project, but that's part of what I love about it. So no, we could not. We did not really have characters that we threw out, but we did have something similar, which is that part of what makes this project work is as those of us who are making it can't possibly intuit all of the different pathways that people are going to take through the game. So we needed quite a robust set of beta testers, beta players, beta readers, if you wish, who would go through and would basically relate their experience back to us and say if anything was incongruous or they couldn't quite vibe with a particular character, something didn't make sense. And through that experience, I didn't exactly throw the characters out, but I did almost rewrite from the ground up two of the characters because they were not received, I think, in a way that I would have liked them to be received, or they were not really understood in a way I would have liked them to be understood. And I thought, okay, I really need to pivot on how I'm writing these characters for future chapters because I don't want people to walk away with the wrong impression.
Okay. You brought up a good point because narrative games, especially when it's like you're choosing kind of your destiny, let's just say, I try to imagine like with so many characters and so many options, and it's just like one option will lead to another. It's just like there's so many permutations, so many uh variations of that, and it's a lot of writing. It takes a lot of writing to get that done. And it's intense. It's very, I can see it's very intense. I struggled to write a one-page paper when I was back in school. So I commend y'all on being able to like sit down and write their stories and try to capture who they are. That's awesome. Speaking of like your writing, so all three of you write for the characters for the game. Yeah. Okay. So I want to know, like, what does your creative process look like when you're starting to create a new character? Like, what do you do? Do you have a like a little oh, what's it called? Spacer. I'm trying to think of the word, but I you get the question, right? Like, how do you get the creative juices flowing, Jack?
Honestly, it just comes to me, depending on the day. But a lot of the writing itself, again, goes by feel at first. What do I feel like this character might be like? And then comes the research, of course. Things that, I'm sure my ideas aren't the end-all be-all of these characters. But jumping off of a point of creativity, and then being able to back it up with a constructed story with research, I feel like is the way to go.
Okay, so you like to start off with doing a little bit of research when you get an idea.
Yeah, I think it's important. If you do everything from your own experience and your own perspective, you're going to miss a lot of things.
That is fair. That is true. Not everybody lives the same exact life. What about yourself, Nikolai? How do you get into your creative zone?
I would say it's quite difficult, but it kind of well, what I really mean is it's quite difficult to describe because I would like to pretend that I can control it, but I think the reality is a little bit different. I think the way that I experience a story is it sort of emerges in my mind as a series of intrusive dialogues with characters that are already kind of coming into being almost on their own, and eventually that transforms into something. I mean, I I am someone who likes to research a lot. I'm also someone who I guess you might describe as having had a pretty adventurous life. Uh, that's probably a very positive way to put it. But I've experienced quite just a wide range of experiences and met a lot of different people. And I think, in a way, these things, they ferment in the back of my mind, and I think they emerge in the characters that perhaps come from my subconscious somehow, from this mixture of things, in the same way that sort of dreams emerge, and you cannot really define. You can say, well, I ate some cheese or something before I went to sleep, or I was stressed, and that's what my dream was about. But it's very difficult to define what exactly they emerged out of, because there's all sorts of other memories and things rolled up. So
Okay.
yeah.
It happens, you know? You can't force creativity, right? It happens. Like I get like that too sometimes. Like I'll be lying in bed thinking to myself like some random ass thoughts, and then I'm just like, oh hey, you know what could be a fun idea? This. And then I have to, if I don't write it down on my notepad, I'm gonna forget it the next day. I'm like, I'll remember this. I'll remember this. No, write it down. What about you, Geneva?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of strange because at first I didn't even think I was going to get into games. I thought I wanted to be an animator for a bit. So a lot of the times when I'm thinking about characters, I start by drawing them. I start by like getting references of like outfits they might wear and like writing down like parts of their personality or like parts of their backstory. Like it kind of is a lot of like feelings and like things coming to me, and also sometimes dreams because I have very vivid random dreams sometimes that just inspire a character sometimes. Um, but yeah, I feel like a lot of the times it can be a little hard if I'm just like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this. Like if it's like a game jam and don't have any inspiration all of a sudden, then I have to really just like sit there and just usually again doodle because it's the easiest way that I get ideas for some reason where I'm just like, oh, maybe this character could be cool. And I'll be like, no, until I like get closer and closer to what I actually want by like getting rid of things that I'm like, no, this isn't working.
Okay, so like just throwing all the like a big brainstorm with yourself pretty much, just getting all
Yeah.
those ideas out there and then going back later, okay, this is good, this is not.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I do the same exact thing. I know what you mean. But you brought up game jam. We were actually going to go to a game jam not too long ago. We are exhausted though because I think it was kind of close to Pride. But
Oh.
do you what is it like being at a game jam? And this is like off to the side question, but what is it being like being at a game jam?
Well, actually, I haven't been in an in-person game jam since 2019. Most of the time
Oh
I've been
wow.
doing like virtual ones. And most of them I haven't been like finishing, but it's been like to help get my creative juices flowing if I'm feeling like burnt out or anything like that, to be like, all right, what kind of story do I want to tell? What type of characters do I want to see? And I know this month actually QG Queerness and Games Con is having a game jam on Itch, which will be very cool. Um, but I feel like it's very inspiring. It's very like fun, especially getting to like play with the things that people have made after the fact. And it's been like what has made me keep like enjoying like indie games when I was younger. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like getting to just go through game jam entries.
Amazing. When you were younger, when we actually met in person, or actually, I think yeah. I was like, when you were younger, what are you talking about? You look fresh out of high school.
I know I'm very young.
But for people who don't know what a game jam is, could you, if Jack, Nikolai, y'all want to chime in what your own experiences with game jam, feel free. But what is a game jam exactly for anybody who doesn't know what it is?
Yeah, so at least for my experience at game jams have been like kind of like challenges or like that they don't have to be challenges. They can be like very chill, relaxed things where it's like, all right, we have a theme and you have to make a game within a certain amount of time. Sometimes there's prizes, sometimes there's judging, but most of the time it's just kind of like to focused on making a game in a certain amount of time based on a theme. Yeah.
Okay. What about yourself, Jack?
Interestingly enough, I have never participated in a game jam. I heard about them all the time, though, and I love the idea, of course, like trying to get a game done quickly around a theme. Uh, I just feel my ideas personally would take more time than is allowed. I'd like to focus on grandiose ideas, let's say.
Okay, okay. No, that's fair enough. I've heard that they're very quick, but we'll have to see whenever I do get a chance to attend one. What about you, Nikolai? What was your, how, have you had experience in a game jam?
I have actually. Interestingly, Inverted Spire was started as a game jam project for Spooktober. I don't remember which year it was right now, but it was for the Spooktober jam. I created a prototype with my friend at the time, who has moved on to other projects now. But it I similar to Jack, I suppose. I also tend to have ideas that are difficult to develop within a short time span, and I also have another consideration, which is I live with a number of disabilities, and I am not always able to have full control, or not always knowing how able I will be in a given time, because of chronic pain and things like that. And so sometimes game jams are not the most welcoming environment for that, because it really is, you have to focus in and you have to get it done within a short time frame. And for example, for the prototype, I did do that. I did push myself and I did as much as I could. And afterwards, unfortunately, my body really broke down and it was not very healthy for me. So it's yeah, it's something that really has to be balanced, I think. And there are, I will say, I know there are game jams that actually don't have that time limit necessarily, or they have more fluid time limits, and precisely for that reason. And of course, if you have an idea that is more easily encapsulated within a shorter time span, that's probably the ideal thing to go in with, where you are just testing a particular mechanic or a particular um, you know, single asset game jam. I remember was something where it's limited just by virtue of how the game jam itself is structured. So it really depends on the parameters of the jam.
Okay. Well, you just mentioned that Inverted Spire actually came out of going to a game jam. I'm curious, would you say game jams are a good experience in helping or inspiring or creating characters that you include in your games? Nikolai.
I'm thinking about this.
Geneva, do you have
Yeah, I was
experience
like,
with that?
yeah, I was gonna ask, I was like, is this for everyone? But yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely say that I have experience with that, just because like usually like the game jam games that I don't end up finishing, I'm like, okay, this is going on the back burner of things I'm going to finish because I care about these characters so much.
Hmm.
And Skate and Day also started as a game jam. It was Yuri Jam 2017. And that one usually lasts for like about 2 months, I think. Or it's still going and lasts for like more than 3 days. I feel like 3 days is way too short for most people. Um, but yeah, I feel like it can be very helpful if you're like kind of stuck and want to like just make something and be like, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to give myself time. And also because it's easy to like find other people to work with as well, which can be good. You can find other people that can end up being your friends afterwards.
So do you find that talking to people there will like helps you create your narratives?
Yeah, or like not even like talk, like I feel like talking to people gets me inspired, being like, yeah, we can do this. But I feel like giving myself that time limit has helped me like push myself more, I feel.
Okay. Love a deadline, especially procrastinators. We need it. Nikolai, have you had a chance to think about that?
Had that percolate a little bit. Yeah,
Percolate a little bit? Jack, I know you haven't been to a game jam yet, but do you find that it could be like helpful in making like more like adding more well-rounded characters into your game?
Yeah, I can't speak to game jams themselves, but I can speak about deadlines. And yeah, I think having sort of a condensed time period to work on something, especially characters, can sort of streamline the process of making those. You have to find out what's important right away.
Mhm.
And as Geneva was saying, you find other people that can sort of fill in those gaps for you, and that's what makes for a great team.
That's awesome. Yeah. Having more people power is definitely helpful. Uh, if you, we could always come back to that question for you, Nikolai, if you'd like. Um,
Honestly, I think that I I think that as far as like meeting people, creating teams, coming up with ideas is concerned, I think for me that usually takes place outside of that. And if I'm coming to something like a game jam or like a story competition or whatever, I'm
Mhm.
usually coming to it with something that I already kind of had a little bit, like
Okay.
it was resting on top of something. So I would not say that the game jam actually, uh, creates that for me, but I do think it facilitates it. Like this is my opportunity to really develop this one thing that I was like, oh, I was interested in this, and now this is my chance to make it something bigger.
Okay, awesome. So the game jams and like just having a team that helps to support your game, right? And create it, build it up, make it what it is. But as far as support from organizations, what would you say would be the most beneficial to help put your games out there, not just to create them, but to put them out there? Like, um, other than funding, because we all know indie developers funding is super important, y'all. It is incredibly important, especially because games are very expensive to make. But other than funding, what would you say is is next important to getting your game out there? Jack, do you have an what would you say?
Yeah, so especially it's important to tell your friends about these games. Like play them yourselves. Wishlist on Steam. Currently, the Office Type has a demo, free demo on Steam, um, and streaming these games as well helps to get the idea out there. Because a lot of
Streamers out
these
there.
times, yeah, a lot of the times people just haven't heard of these games. Um, and the more people that know, the more people who can support us.
Awesome. What about you, Geneva? What would you say people, companies, organizations, what can they do to support your game besides monetary, support?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say basically the same thing, just like getting the word out there, playing the games. Like, if you want to leave feedback, I'm sure like most people appreciate it, whether or not it like helps them or not. Um, but yeah, I feel like what can be really hard when making games just as indie developers is like, especially if you don't have a big team, is like having time to like market it yourself and being like, hey, I have a game. So yeah, definitely like sharing the games and playing them and telling your friends.
Awesome. Y'all tell your friends about these games. You want to support your indie developers, especially when they got some queer content. Nikolai, what about yourself? What would you say is important into supporting getting support for your game out there?
So I agree with both Jack and Geneva on their points. I think I would add on another little thing, which is that. So, for example, with the game like the Inverted Spire, and with a lot about the other kinds of work that I create, which tends to be kind of centered on some heavier topics, trauma and so on.
Hmm.
I think that there can be an additional challenge because it's not so-called family-friendly content,
Hmm.
and it is something that quite a lot of people might find challenging or confronting in and of itself, regardless of whether it has queer and trans themes and so on. And in when it comes to getting it out there or approaching streamers or talking to people to promote or market a game like this, I think that you encounter something where you really need to make sure that it is represented in a way that is respectful and that it is kind of reaching the right audience.
Hmm.
Um, because because of the nature of the themes involved, um, depending on who it reaches. And I have experienced some harassment in that regard as well. Sometimes you can find yourself with your game really reaching the wrong people, and there's kind of a splashback, and in that splashback can also hurt the people who do actually find themselves in the game, who do feel strongly about the themes. So
Got it.
it's a difficult thing to navigate.
Yeah, it is. It can be difficult. Unfortunately, we are up for our time, y'all. I had so many more questions. Well, not a whole lot, but I had more questions. We got through it. We got through most of them, but it's been very enlightening. I loved hearing all of your answers about all your different games, how much detail, in depth, and how much research you go into making your games. And I really appreciate y'all taking time out of your day to come and hang out with us, y'all. All three of our developers here were recipients of the Victoria Kennedy Microgrant Program. So it is actually open for this month, y'all. So if you want to check it out, be sure to go to the Queerty Gamers website. And also, you heard it from all the developers. Wish list, stream it, post it on social media. This is how you can help get more queer stories out there. And I will go ahead and do my little outro. Thanks for watching this panel, y'all. I really appreciate everybody stopping by and saying hi. Thank you, Gaming Live, for having us. And thank you, Remag, for sponsoring this session. If you haven't heard, anyone who signs up in Remag and joins the gaming community before the end of October is in with the chance of winning a Xbox Series X. Scan the QR code below to join. To check out what else is happening across Gaming Live, visit gamingmag.com/live and follow Gaming Mag on all social media. Bye, y'all. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.